Jeff Staple.
What up? How you doing?
I am so excited.
Thanks for coming to our Dubai pigeon coop.
That's right.
My detective wall here.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's surreal, actually. Because I'm wearing one of your shoes right now.
Yeah, that one over there.
It's actually one of the first sneakers that I actually really fell in love with.
Thank you.
I was just surfing online and I saw that Concepts, I think, or not sure which retailer was about to drop them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to have those.
Yeah, thank you.
So they launched them here at Level, and I was like the first one to flock there and sort of like get it. And I was so super excited to have them. So I'm so super stoked to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
So this is really cool. Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to ask you, how does it feel to be in Sole DXB in Dubai, in this beautiful festival here? How do you feel?
It's so dope. It's super dope. I mean, Seoul is amazing. Dubai, I think, is honestly like a city that probably has like a strange reputation globally, like as this sort of just like, you hear about the 7-star hotels and the gold everywhere, you know, but there's so much more culture here that's to be had. And the thing that most impressed me was like, I did a lot of people watching while I was out here outside of Seoul, and it's just like it's like a melting pot of like different cultures. And you know, people call New York and America a melting pot, but this is like a melting pot of completely different ingredients, you know, like people and cultures that you don't really see in the Western Hemisphere, and they're all here vibing, and it's like the piece is amazing, the style's amazing, the food's amazing. So I'm really most impressed with that.
That sounds really cool. I mean, how long have you been here?
I've been here for 4 days.
4 days, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is this your first time, or have you been here?
No, I've been here, last time I came here was 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But I came here a couple of different times after that.
It's changed a little bit, I would say. Just
oh, big time, yeah. For sure, yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about the, you know, what you're doing here, the sneaker you're about to launch here, and...
yeah, I mean,
what's the story of that?
We made a decision a couple months ago to come out here. Raj, who I met in New York, who's one of the co-founders and co-owners of Sole, asked me to do a couple talks if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of things. I wrote an article in the magazine, the newest issue of Sole DXB magazine.
Nice.
Which is really great. I encourage you guys to check that out. I did a solo keynote talk yesterday.
Yeah.
Today I did a one-to-one live with Hiroshi Fujiwara from Japan.
Yeah.
We brought our booth out here. And I think what we did was really dope. This is our first Sole, so we didn't know exactly what to expect.
Right.
And I think it was cool what we did. We basically brought like a mobile printing station.
Yeah.
And so kids could basically make their own custom one-off staple shirt. And we upped the ante on that by making each shirt that you buy a raffle ticket, and that raffle allows you the chance to win one of these Nike Black Pigeon Dunks that we dropped a couple weeks ago that blew out globally. We saved 20 pairs for Sole DXB. So I think all in all, we did a really fun, interactive execution out here.
Well, I want to take it back to the original Dunk Pigeons that you released, and there was, I see you have the New York Post story
the
out there.
cover, Riot.
And that looks really, I mean, tell us, how did that feel when that sort of like dropped and there was this much commotion around it, and like
scared out of my life, man. Like it was like really scary. I mean, you see that image, and you could see me dead center in there with my back anyway. And it was like a situation where I just felt really endangered for my life and the safety of my staff, you know what I mean? So my number one thing was like, get out of here alive and make sure that all my staff doesn't get hurt either. And obviously then all of the customers that are there trying to get a shoe, and the NYPD was there. And when you have NYPD, you know, the New York Police Department, and a bunch of like hungry, angry young people, like it's like a firework spark that's just waiting to go off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're just trying to keep the peace, and that's all I was concerned about. And to be honest, the next day when I saw the newspaper come out, a part of me was like a little embarrassed, you know?
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
Wow.
It was like half embarrassment and half accomplishment, because you sort of, it's half embarrassment because if in any other situation, if they were like, you were responsible for this riot, you would feel fucking bad, right? But it's like, you were responsible for this riot, but it's because you made such a great product that everyone wanted. That's like the accomplishing part. So it was like 50-50 duality I was facing.
Yeah. And do you feel like this sort of hype around sneakers, do you feel that's like very important to the game, and that keeps it exciting, keeps it alive, keeps it like...
Yeah, but you have to understand, like, when that came out, even like after the first week or the first month and then the first year, no one had anticipation of how much that shoe would mean to the culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like if you think about like Michael Jackson's Thriller album or something like that. Like, the week that comes out, no one's like, yo, this is a classic. Like, 50 years from now, we're gonna be listening to Thriller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but like, it takes time for like that label to be put onto a thing. You know what I mean? It takes the people's reception of it and their appreciation for it over and over again, for them to be like, this is now considered a classic, and then, or this is now considered a quote-unquote grail, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's been 13 years since the Pigeon Dunk originally came out, and it's just great to see that it has lasted that test of time. And so now, looking at it, 13 years later, I'm very proud of it. But I can honestly say that 1 to 2 years or 3 years later, I was like, yeah, we did a shoe, and a lot of people will pay a lot of money for it, but that phenomenon might end anytime,
Yeah. I mean, it must feel really crazy to be on that sort of that end where you're the person sort of like innovating, and you're the person sort of like putting out that sneaker, whereas we are the people who are buying it. Yeah. So it's almost we're the ones who are excited for it. It's just really, it's so different. You're in a different side of that game.
Yeah.
Which must feel really crazy. I mean,
it's a little crazy, and I often think about how I miss being on the other side of the game.
Right.
Like, I used to be a sneakerhead. Right. I used to buy a lot of sneakers, and I'd go into a store and I'd be enamored when I see like, yo, that's so dope, I gotta get that.
Yeah.
But now I go into a sneaker store and I'm like, I look at like how it's made, and I'm like, okay, I get it. This costs $12.50 to make. They're charging $180 for it. I can see the marketing campaign. They hired that photographer. They got that social media influencer.
Really?
Like, I get it. They paid that person $12,500. That photographer got $30,000. He didn't sell the rights for the usage for the billboard. He got to get paid for that. Like, I see all of that now,
right?
And it just robs it of the love. You know
Interesting.
What I mean? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So where did that sort of like love come from? What was your first sort of inspiration? Like, I got to get into this. I need to sort of make.
I would say I've been a sneakerhead since I was in the 6th grade.
Okay.
And it came from sport. Like, I was a fan of basketball. I was a fan of tennis, and when you see what Michael Jordan and Bo Jackson and Andre Agassi were doing on the courts, you're like, how can I get even 1% of what it is that they're doing? And you look at the moves that they do, and you're like, all right, I'm never gonna do that shit. But then you look down, and you're like, but I can get what's on his feet, and if I could just get that, I could be like 1 inch closer to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's almost like if you see like a god, and like a god is wearing like armor or like has a sword or something, you just want one element of that, you know what I mean? And so that was the introduction of sneakers to my life. Like, I wanted to be Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, Andre Agassi, and so I bought those things just to get close,
It's a very interesting path though, to go from sport to sort of like fashion design.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting path though.
That is a natural occurrence that happened because I wasn't an athlete. I obviously had other interests, right? So I was into fashion, I was into hip-hop, I was into music. And so I buy a sports shoe, let's say an Air Jordan 1, which is made for sports. I buy that shoe, and then I start incorporating the way I wear my jeans or the way I wear my button-down, and I match a baseball hat, but I don't wear it tight. I wear it like off my head.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden I'm remixing this whole look, right? And so that's where sports athletic culture started to turn into lifestyle culture.
Right.
Yeah. And then, you fast forward a little bit more, and I think what happens is like the brands start seeing like, yo, I love the way that guy put this basketball shoe together with his whole outfit. Like, we should start making stuff for that guy.
Yeah.
In addition to Michael Jordan, we should start making it for this other guy too. And so that's really where, from a sneaker brand standpoint, like the lifestyle divisions of a sneaker brand started to be born.
Do you feel that, the sneaker game moved from sports and now it's definitely like a fashion culture?
Yeah.
And you no longer have to be into sports sort of to be into sneakers. And now that that movement started sort of becoming really big. And when did you think that actually started becoming huge? And who do you think spearheaded that?
It started becoming huge probably in the 2000s. And the cool thing about it is that who spearheaded it was like all the kids.
Right.
That's how it was spearheaded. It wasn't like, there was no social media influencer back then. There was no iconic like Kanye West or something like that. You know, it was like just the dopest, flyest kid in high school, right? And he would rock his gear in a certain way. He'd go to Foot Locker, right? You know what Foot Locker is?
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So he'd go to like his mall store, and he'd be like, "Yo, why don't you make these in all olive green?" You know, and the store owner would be like, obviously he can't do anything, but when he goes to meet with Nike or Adidas, they're like, "Hey, how's stuff selling?" He's like, "Well, let me tell you something. The coolest kid in high school came in and he said, you should make these in olive green."
Yeah.
And the brand's like, maybe we should try that, you know? So next season comes around, hey, remember you asked for olive green? We made you an olive green.
Wow.
Give it to that, you know, hook one up with that kid with the coolest. And that's really how you multiply that by every high school in America and every college and every nightclub promoter and then every DJ. And that's how the culture started to shift.
And do you feel like the introduction of people like, you know, yourself, Kanye West, and all these individuals who are getting into this game and sort of creating sneakers, do you think that sort of like built a whole new industry that didn't really exist before, like 5-10 years ago? Yeah,
I mean, now the division, the lifestyle division of sneaker brands are bigger than the performance divisions by far, which I personally think that's a mistake. You know, but it is the reality of what's happened, and I have to admit that people like me and Hiroshi and Kanye are part of that problem. I don't want to say we're part of the problem.
So interesting.
We birthed the lifestyle, like, you know. Yeah. And the sneaker companies saw it, and then they just, as with any corporation, once they see something start to hit, they invest heavy into it and make it hit more, right? They start to spin it. But the lifestyle for a sneaker sports brand should never be the biggest division of a brand, I feel. Yeah. I feel like that's when a brand really needs to start to reset itself, you know.
Who is your sort of, like, I'm looking at the wall here.
Yeah.
And who is your favorite collaboration that you've worked on?
Yeah.
And which brand do you enjoy working with the most? I don't know if you're allowed to answer such questions, but I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, how many times do I get to sit with you? So
yeah, I mean, there's always pluses and minuses with different brands.
Yeah.
And actually, it goes project by project.
Right.
You know, like you see, I did like 5 projects with Puma, you know, and I did like 15 projects with Timberland or something like that, you know. So each one is going to be a little bit different. So it's hard to answer that question. I mean, I will say that like Puma is very, very good to work with.
Okay.
And I think it's because they're like not number 1 or number 2. And so that puts you in a position to do a couple of things, right? It makes you hustle harder, okay? And you start listening to people more, right? When you're number 1 or number 2, you think you're the shit,
right?
Which you are. And then you feel like you sort of sit back and there's like a lot of politics involved and there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot more people, a lot more structure, and you kind of feel like you need me more than I need you type of mentality, right? Whereas Puma is very like receptive to ideas. So I will say I do honestly love working with Puma. Every project we've done has been pretty awesome, and I think like in any collaboration, a good one is where it's a win-win.
Right.
Like the collaborator wins and the brand wins. And I think in the Puma collabs that we've done, it's been a really good example of that. You know, like you were talking about the Pumas that you love. The Blaze of Glory Pumas are like really highly coveted. And so for the brand, it's a win, right? They have this amazing product that like kids love and they like really covet. And for me, it's a win because I get to make this amazing shoe that I wouldn't be able to make on my own. So that's like where it's just a nice win, you know?
And why the shades of pink, or the shades of red, or these type of colors that you want to go for? I love those colors.
It's a pigeon. It's a pigeon.
Oh, okay.
Like our logo's a pigeon.
Right.
And so a pigeon's feet are always pink, and they always have black, gray, and white as the upper. And sometimes pigeons are like really black and dark, and sometimes they're really white. So if you look at the New Balance there, that's like a white dove pigeon. You know, and this is like a standard pigeon, and then this is like a black pigeon, you know? So like, they're just all variations of our logo. And you know, sometimes you'll notice I don't always put pigeons on stuff. And when I don't, it's because these don't look like pigeons. Right. So I don't put the pigeon on it, right? So it's pretty simple.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Who is your sort of influence when it comes to like design and is there somebody in particular that you look up to and say like, okay, right, this is the guy that really, or this is the girl that really inspires me? Or
from a designer standpoint?
I mean, who's your muse, I guess? Like, we all have somebody that we sort of like are inspired by or push, you know what I mean? Like that sort of thing.
I guess it's at the stage of my life that I'm in right now, but I think that the people who inspire me now are like business people for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think I've gotten past the stage of my life where I'm like just a creator.
Okay.
You know, like when you're in like creation mode and you're like a painter, or when you're like a sculptor and your hands are making something, which is, by the way, like a beautiful phase in being an artist, then your muse is like someone who's also creating, right?
Right.
But now I'm at the stage where Staple is a global brand, and we operate in all different countries and we do many different projects. And in order to be a global brand, you have to be able to delegate and operate more as a businessman.
Right.
And so I'm in the phase of my career now where like I look up to like, you know, Jack Dorsey, who is the chairman of both Twitter and Square.
Yeah.
Which is like, how do you run Twitter and Square at the same time?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, you know, which is like, how do you run, you know, Tesla and SpaceX and Hyperloop, you know, all at the same time.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So like to me, it's not because I'm infatuated with like the amount of money they have or anything like that. To me, it's really like, how do you manage to delegate and manage all of these different things at the same time? You know, because I have a clothing line, I have a design studio, I have a retail store, and then there's Jeff Staple, the brand. I do talks and all that stuff. So like, trying to manage all these things is sometimes challenging. But then I look at Jack Dorsey, I'm like, dude runs Twitter and Square. Like if he could do that, I could fucking do this.
Right,
you know? So
right.
like it kind of inspires me to get my ass up and like really hustle even harder.
And they're both listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and
Exactly.
you know, so he's really hustling. I mean, he's really. And do you have any plans to sort of like open maybe retail shops in Dubai? Or
I'd love to. I think a couple of things that I have to make sure of before I open a retail store in the country is that the community here can support it. Right. So like, it's easy enough to open a store. Right. Boom. Get the rent, open the store, put shit in there. Fine. The tough part is making sure that the community comes out and supports, and not only when you drop a Pigeon dump.
Right.
That's easy too. Make a Pigeon dump, put it in. Yeah, lines around the block. It's the other 364 days a year.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So, is there a community here to support that? And then with that, like, does the bandwidth exist for me to be able to like cultivate it? You know, like so. If there is a community here, will I be able to come by enough? Will I be able to hire somebody that I trust to run it for me, you know? Because you also don't want to walk into a space that you yourself as the founder are not proud of. Right. Because that isn't managed correctly, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to be weary of that before I make the full decision, you know, of whether we come to the Middle East.
Do you feel, so you were talking about something really interesting, which is there's one or two sneakers that drop, and then there's a 360 days of the year where you have to like sustain. But do you think those 2 or 3 sneakers are hype sneakers that drop, and you have this reseller market that sort of fuels the underbelly of the sneaker game? How healthy do you think that is for the industry in general, to have those hype drops, to have those resellers who put up the price of sneakers when you want to, you know, resell them, or they buy them really quickly? And
I just had this talk with Hiroshi actually about talking about reselling. It's healthy for the overall culture because it elevates the product that's coming out to be more like artworks. Right. There's not too many things that have resale value in this world. It's like artwork, some watches, right, and a couple of cars. You know, and now sneakers. So it's in a very rare air of like covetable items, you know. So that in that way, reselling is a benefit to the culture. But if you look at reselling, and if you look at someone like me and Hiroshi who designs these shoes, and then you look at Nike who makes these shoes, right? Like this shoe costs $100 to sell, you know, $50 to make, whatever, but the resell on it is $300. So there's $200 extra that doesn't go to the designers, and it doesn't go to the person who made it. It just goes to this guy who got it and just did this, right? So that guy arguably did the least amount of work, but got the most amount of money. So that part is not really fair, but it's okay to me. Like there's a lot of things. There's a lot more things that are more unfair in this world.
Right.
And if that guy figured out the economy of scale to be able to get that kind of money, then more power to him.
I guess standing in a queue for 2 to 3 nights.
Yeah.
You know.
But sometimes they don't even stand in the queue. They pay a homeless person to stand in the queue.
Right.
So like it's all that's just the hustle. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's all supply and demand and like expense and income. You know.
I feel it is. It's as a consumer, it's annoying. You know, because you want to buy these coveted sneakers, but then you can't because there's bots out there. And there's like you said, paying homeless people to stand in line or whatever.
Right.
And it just feels like unfair to me.
Yeah.
But in some way, it feels like it keeps the sneaker game very exciting.
Right.
You know, so when something does drop, you want to make sure that you're the first to be in line, you're the first to covet, you're first to buy, you're the first to tell and brag to all your friends that, oh shit, I got my, my Pigeon, I got my Yeezys, I got my whatever. So, so I feel like it
adds energy.
It has that sort of thing, and it keeps that whole thing exciting.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well, look, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Man.
I know that you have, you got a lot to do here, and we only have a limited amount of time with you. But I really, truly appreciate that you took the time to sit with me today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, I hope to see you in Dubai again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks.
Peace.